Being one of PlatinumGames' babies, Vanquish sets out to shatter expectations and provide a wholly unique experience. And no, that really isn't an exaggeration. If you aren't aware of the games that PlatinumGames makes, look no further than titles such as Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, The Wonderful 101, or Bayonetta. These people have a knack for unique, one-of-a-kind games that don't mind the inclusion of cheesy or wild ideas. Vanquish thankfully follows suit, although not without a few flaws.
What the man?
Plot-wise, the game is quite simple, especially in comparison to some of PlatinumGames' other contributions. As Sam Gideon, a DARPA agent, you are sent to assist in a global conflict against space Russians. Or, I suppose, a single space Russian. Yeah, even though you're fighting an army, there really is only one actual human enemy in the entire game. It's certainly an original way to portray an opposing force, with their innumerable soldiers not actually being actual soldiers. The game doesn't delve into this fact too much, but it can't help but feel like, while the Russian star is taking out thousands during cutscenes and gameplay, the American forces aren't actually touching them in any meaningful way. I'm pretty sure there's a message there somewhere, or at least there could have been. Anyhow, these Russians have taken over a space station capable of launching massive amounts of solar energy at the Earth, and promptly doing so, fire upon San Francisco. Thousands of people literally perish from the immense radiation and heat. It's a very crazy cutscene that made me think that this game might be leaning towards horror for a minute. It doesn't, but you can see why I would think that. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised though, because just like Dino Crisis, the director of Resident Evil is on this one too. And with him directing other games such as Product Number 03 on the GameCube, it isn't the last time we're going to be seeing him on this channel. Immediately realizing that America has been attacked, the president decides to send a variable army to recapture the station. This time, no special teams are sent in to disrupt and dismantle the enemy, it's full-on war. I'm talking battle cruisers and enough sleeveless muscle-bound soldiers to put Gears of War to shame. Sam's role in all of this is to test DARPA's new ARS system and blade suit, with the hopes of giving the USA an edge in this new conflict. He doesn't seem to care too much about what's going on though, and harbors some disdain towards the situation, believing that an all-out war isn't an efficient way to handle things. This puts him at odds with Robert Burns, an overly patriotic Marine who views the USA as a symbol of order and meaning in the world. On paper, this dynamic sounds pretty interesting. However, this being a PlatinumGames game, what you get is essentially the two most hyper-masculine characters in the universe calling each other assholes for 3/4 of the game.
Miss me, sweetheart. Jesus, you? I liked you better when I thought you were dead. I liked you better when I didn't have to hear your
It seems like Gideon and Emery and Steve Bloom were tasked with trying to out-snake each other, and I'm not talking about Solid Snake here, I'm talking about full-on Kurt Russell Escape from New York Snake.
Call me Snake.
It's all male posturing, just one step short of chest beating, but presented in the goofiest way possible. It wouldn't have been difficult for this to turn into something like Rogue Warrior, a game that took itself too seriously, attempting to showcase maturity and edginess through excessive swearing.
Fucking asshole, you little you suck-ass pig.
But Vanquish parodies that style of writing by portraying Sam and Burns as testosterone-fueled stereotypes whose personalities intentionally contradict their actions and motivations. It subverts the entire concept of an action hero and exposes just how ridiculous characters tasked with shooting everything can be.
You're not allowed to smoke on the ship.
A few side characters linger in the background, such as Elena, who acts as Sam's operator. They mostly appear for support calls and have minimal characterization, mainly providing Sam with information about his next objective or details about new enemies.
The arrivals plaza for landing bay 3 is up ahead.
We've got heavy fighting in the plaza. Bravo, move forward but maintain cover.
Roger that.
Games like the Metal Gear series managed to create compelling stories using this style of communication, but Vanquish doesn't really make meaningful use of it. Most characters in Vanquish could have benefited from more development. For instance, Candide, a scientist with a connection to Sam and who holds crucial knowledge about the station's microwave array, only makes a few appearances before being killed off. Aside from that, he just communicates over the radio sometimes. The game's main villain lacks a significant presence throughout the game, his motivations solely revolving around the president, and like Candide, he's only given a few scenes. Sam encounters him only once early in the game, and again at the very end. Frankly, I had no idea that the bogey boss that I encountered was supposed to be him initially, nor did I realize that the final encounter was meant to be with him until the game abruptly transitioned into its open ending. And don't you worry, I'll be getting to that one later.
business here is done. До свидания.
While the game's satire is enjoyable, the true focus of Vanquish lies in its gameplay. In this aspect, it excels to such a degree that I now understand why it's achieved cult classic status. There truly isn't another game like it. Despite having cover shooter elements on the surface, Vanquish incorporates a multitude of innovations that set it apart from titles like Gears of War. Firstly, it incorporates elements commonly found in vertical and horizontal shooters. Collecting multiple copies of a weapon not only replenishes ammo, but also allows for upgrades. Accumulating duplicates of a weapon can lead to significant bonuses, providing an edge against the game's toughest and most formidable enemies, of which there are plenty. When a weapon reaches its final rank, Sam receives a massive upgrade, turning even the most questionable weapons into incredibly powerful tools. Choosing which weapons to stick with becomes a challenging decision, given that Vanquish offers an array of unique weapons, ranging from disc launchers to homing lasers. The variety is exceptional, although I must note that there are far too many automatic weapons in the game. Why do we need a heavy machine gun, boost machine gun, and assault rifle when these weapons essentially function the same way? The game's blade system comes into play with the weapons as well, where Sam absorbs the design data of a weapon to utilize it. However, it mostly amounts to a cool weapon swap animation and serves to explain why Sam can just switch between weapons so quickly. Combat in Vanquish revolves around agility, utilizing Sam's suit for swift maneuvers rather than relying on its actual armor. This is where the game's ARS system shines. Evading attacks and executing last-minute saves triggers a time-slowing effect, essentially putting Sam in bullet time. Quick, high-risk movements are consistently rewarded, while remaining stationary, even in cover, can lead to a swift death. It's an unusual experience to play a game where defensive tactics aren't the optimal approach, and sliding to action is the most effective way to take down enemies, especially when the game is essentially a cover shooter. However, the ARS mechanic isn't easily exploited. Sam's heat gauge depletes rapidly, or even instantly based on certain actions, causing his suit to overheat and render him defenseless. Properly managing heat levels on the battlefield requires a considerable amount of skill and leaves Sam vulnerable to even the most basic of enemies. Now, I've focused on the gameplay aspect in the core of this review because the majority of Vanquish is relatively light on story. In fact, I would go as far as to say that most of the game consists of banter between Sam and Burns.
Wonderful. Even made flying merry-go-rounds.
You're welcome to take a ride.
So, continuing the storyline, as Sam arrives to deactivate the microwave array, he discovers that Dr. Candide has somehow escaped the enemy and successfully turned it off. Burns promptly murders him, revealing that the USA intends to exploit the conflict to provoke a war and revive a failing economy. Disagreeing with this approach and distressed by Candide's death, Sam confronts Burns and the Marines, who also plan to utilize the station to destroy Moscow on the president's orders.
War is not economic stimulus.
Burns' patriotism is so intense that he is willing to sacrifice himself to restore the USA's status as a global superpower.
This is not the time or the place for regrets.
The ends come before the means now.
Then I will let you handle the means.
And I will bring about the ends.
Now, remember when I said that there's only really one human enemy in this entire game? Well, that wasn't exactly true. This section marks the game's sole instance of fighting human enemies, who ironically end up being your previous allies. Yes, you are now tasked with fighting against the very people that you've been fighting alongside the entire game and attempting to save whenever you can. It's a very odd feeling after fighting so many robotic enemies, especially considering that these guys all have separate mechanics. Unlike robotic enemies that continue functioning even with their heads blown off, these individuals collapse as soon as their heads are hit. You're fighting against flesh here, and after you've spent so many hours fighting against machines, it feels somewhat surreal and almost wrong. Burns serves as the boss here, so he can't be taken down so easily. You're tasked with chasing him down as he fires at you and summons dozens of Marines to intercept. It's not exactly challenging, and ends with him ultimately having a change of heart, developing a newfound respect for Sam during the course of the game. Apparently shooting 10,000 robots and calling each other assholes is enough to warrant a self-sacrifice, so Burns allows Sam to escape so that he might detonate a bomb in his arm and prevent the president's soldiers from attacking Moscow. It honestly comes out of left field entirely, especially considering less than 10 minutes prior there was a cutscene showing Burns being fanatically patriotic and devoted to pretty much destroying everything on the station station and allowing Moscow to be attacked. But then again, this is a game with the guy that did God Hand involved, so go figure. Disappointingly, the final battle in Vanquish is simply a rematch against two versions of Bogey. It's essentially the same boss fought earlier in the game, just duplicated with a few additional moves. Surprisingly, the most significant aspect of this battle isn't the showdown itself, but rather the revelation that Sam experiences. It becomes clear that the president had initially supported the Russian Star, only to betray them in order to initiate a war against Russia. The attack on San Francisco was a retaliatory strike, but Sam acknowledges that it was wrong to kill innocent people and that both sides are at fault. Interestingly, he also questions why he's been thrust into the midst of a conflict that he has no personal involvement in, but the last boss doesn't care.
Make this my fight. I'm gonna end it.
This moment of character development for Sam is really remarkable and stands as one of the game's strongest moments. However, it's so close to the game's ending that it's just completely wasted. If you don't mind spoiling a game that's almost 15 years old, then feel free to continue watching and discover what is perhaps the most detrimental aspect of Vanquish. If you find it hard to accept that yet another cult classic might have an utterly unsatisfying conclusion, then you're probably in denial. Consider this your warning, and here we go, onto the ending of Vanquish. Now, despite having read and watched numerous reviews of Vanquish over the years, the primary complaints I've encountered were always about its length. I was completely unaware that the game represents only the first part of an incomplete storyline, which abruptly ends with the villain escaping unscathed.
Elena, this is a slave unit.
It's revealed that the station attack was part of a larger plan, and although Sam escapes with information about what has transpired, it ultimately proves to be somewhat useless, seeing as the president provides a, well, highly controversial solution to her problem. And yeah, that's it. That's Vanquish's ending. It is both open and brief, and honestly, not very satisfying at all. I hate to say it about a game that's pretty much good in every other aspect, but this game has one of the worst endings I've ever seen, even for an open ending. And I'm one of those people that actually like the ending in Clive Barker's Jericho, so you can imagine how bad this is to me, and how bad it probably is to you. The exact reasons why Vanquish never received the sequel it deserved remains a mystery. There are rumors suggesting that a sequel was in the works for Xbox One, but ended up being cancelled by Microsoft along with other projects like Scalebound and the original build of Bayonetta 3. It's possible that because of this, the game's development was halted due to various administrative issues, aka loads of paperwork and law stuff. So there is still a possibility that just like Bayonetta 3, it might come back again on either the Switch or the PS5 or something like that. While the open ending definitely bothers me, I still understand why everybody still loves this game and why communities still laud it as a cult classic. It stands as one of the most ambitious reimaginings of cover shooters out there, and it really makes something that became very standardized interesting again. There just really isn't anything like it. Not even visually, as you can tell. Even in 2003, this game looks great. I'm capturing footage from the PS4 remaster, but even on the PS3, it's a visual treat. PlatinumGames rarely disappoints when it comes to graphics and design, so I really can't sit here and make a whole section dedicated to that. I don't usually rate things, but with Vanquish, I'm going to say that it's excellent, and I would definitely suggest playing it even despite that wonky ending. So check it out if you can. It's available on modern consoles, and I say if you want a good weekend, this is how you have it. This has been Kei-Nova checking out another game for you. I'll be back next week with another one. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.